One thing I've noticed that novice writers often struggle with is knowing the difference between summarizing and analyzing and knowing when to do which. So, in a nutshell, the difference between these two is this. Summaries simply enumerate the main points of a work or a passage. Analysis, on the other hand, breaks a work down. It looks closely at the parts in order to see how they work together, or in order to work out some problem, or in order to give an interpretation of what's going on. In other words, summaries are superficial, but in an analysis, you're digging deeper. For example, you could summarize Star Wars. A farm kid from a desert planet gets swept up in an interstellar war by trying to help two robots find their master, and then helping their master rescue a princess, and then helping the princess defeat the evil galactic empire. Or you could summarize Hamlet's To Be or Not to Be soliloquy. A young man pretending to be crazy in order to figure out whether or not his uncle killed his father suddenly finds himself contemplating the mystery of what happens after death, and realizes that it is this mystery, the fear of what might happen on the other side of death, that keeps people from just killing themselves and ending all the suffering they experience in mortality. But while these summaries superficially tell you what the original work was about, they don't really address any of the problems that might arise from engaging with the work, from interpreting the work, from exploring what kinds of problems the work might introduce, or from trying to apply the lessons or discover the lessons of the work and apply them to real life. None of that is handled in a summary, but those are the very things that analysis is designed to address. So, summaries are superficial. An analysis is an attempt to dive deeper into a work, teasing out problems, meanings, and applications beyond the work itself. Consider again my summary of Star Wars. A farm kid from a desert planet gets swept up in an interstellar war by trying to help two robots find their master, and then helping their master rescue a princess, and then helping the princess defeat an evil galactic empire. While this summary gives us the gist of the story, and could itself work as an introduction to an analysis, there's actually no attempt to dive any deeper into the story, to tease out any problems, to look for deeper meanings, to look for lessons in the text and apply those lessons to real life. An analysis of Star Wars, then, would do all of those things, or at least one of them. It would require a summary as an introduction to give context to the analysis that you're performing. But it would go beyond the summary. It would make claims, suggest interpretations that might not be self-evident in the work. So here's an example of what maybe an introduction to an analysis of Star Wars might look like. While some might argue that Star Wars is nothing more than popcorn cinema, it is, after all, just the story of a whiny farm kid from a desert planet who gets swept up in an interstellar war by trying to help two robots find their master, and then by helping their master rescue a princess, and then helping the princess defeat the evil galactic empire. The original Star Wars uses this popcorn context to explore some very interesting and sometimes profound issues that are endemic to the modern experience. The relationship between the individual and the state, the relationship between the state and religion, the idea of destiny, the place of the spiritual and the religious in a world that approaches both with a knee-jerk doubt and that sees them as obsolete in the face of scientific and technological wonders. Something I want you to notice about this, aside from the fact that I'm just getting started, this intro is beginning to tease out some deeper ideas that Star Wars addresses. It's trying to resist any potential critical dismissal of the work. People might want to just dismiss it as a funny sci-fi film. There's more going on there, is what it's saying. But more than that, any one of the problems I've identified, the relationship between the individual and the state, the relationship between the state and religion, the idea of destiny, the place of the spiritual in a technological age, any one of these could easily be developed into an essay of its own. And each one would require a lot of close reading and a lot of interpretation of Star Wars as a text in order to substantiate any claims I wanted to make. That's the key difference between a summary and analysis. The former simply restates things that have already been stated. The latter teases out things that might not be self-evident. So when you're asked to write an analysis of something and you find yourself just retelling the story or restating the gist of your object of study, you need to stop yourself. You're doing it wrong. You need to take a step back and remember that you've been asked to do an analysis and not a summary. Go back to your object of study. Find one thing, at least one thing, that will require you to look more closely at your text, that might require a little bit of interpretation, that might be some lesson that the text is trying to teach you, that might have application beyond the text. Anything that's not immediately self-evident, anything that's not surface. And then ask yourself, what other things in the text, what are the things that I'm seeing in this text that lead me to think this thing? When you do that, as you go about finding those things that help explain what it is you're seeing, you're engaging in analysis. You can write that down, the process of trying to figure that out, and it can be a rough draft of an analysis. So, like everything in writing, analysis and summary are skills that you can learn. With a little bit of learning and a little bit of practice, you'll know you too can become a skilled writer. That's all for now.